Hello, I'm Doug and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And today we are at episode number 2 of Chilies and Peppers, where we're looking at sweet bell peppers. We did green bell peppers in episode 1, and these are the non-green ones. They're sweeter, they're fruitier. They could be more interesting depending on what you're after. So we got the big ones that are the same size as green bell peppers. We got these little ones that are, I don't know, a little novelty item. These are what I'm familiar with. I take them with me for lunch every day. So we'll be looking at these both fresh and roasted and in salsa and plain and talk about them a little bit. But before we get too far along, I want to remind you to like the video, leave comments down below, leave questions down below. Subscribe and click that bell to get notified when the new videos come out, usually on Mondays. So the big event in my chili tasting life was coming across this book, The Chili Book, which is by Mark Miller, who is a restaurateur in New Mexico. But he describes, with pictures and tasting notes, chili after chili after chili. And half the book is fresh, but then he goes into dried ones. And they have their own sets of uses in Southwestern cooking and Mexican cooking. And this whole series is going to be very Mexican-centric. So most of the chilies come from Mexico. Very few will come from other places. There might be some Asian ones or some Italian ones, but mostly Mexican. So I think all these were actually grown in Mexico. Maybe in California. I'm very familiar with these. I take 6 of these, 2 reds, 2 oranges, 2 yellows every day for lunch, with other stuff, tomatoes and carrots and a boiled egg and stuff like that. So a very simple food, but these turn out to be pretty interesting. And I think they've got all sorts of phytochemicals and compounds in them that are pigments that have something to do with vision or this thing or that thing. So I'm not crazy on health benefits. I don't read all that stuff. I don't spend any of my time on that stuff. I just eat lots of stuff in its very natural state. So we're just going to dive in here. So let's go in with a yellow one, which turned out to be the most fleshy or thick or succulent of the flesh and has the most moisture in it. But I don't really smell a lot on the nose. But when you bite into it, you go, oh, this is sweet. It's fruity. It's a mild, soft flavor, but it goes in the direction of maybe peach or apricot. Some soft, light fruit with the sweetness. There's tiny bits of herbaceous notes that you might relate to one of the green bell peppers, but those are not strong. The green things just scream green. They're full of chlorophyll. They're full of something that isn't like this at all. So that's totally absent, and what is here is a sweet, subtle, light fruitiness. It's light. It's maybe a touch of honey, a touch of citrus, but not the sour parts, not citric acid. These are light fruit notes, but it is definitely fruity, way more than to the vegetable side. So that's how I eat them every day. When I get down to the end, I just sort of break in half and peel out the ribs and seeds and lay that aside. So all I leave is a little seed pod in the stem. So that is a very familiar flavor to me. I like it. I enjoy it. I don't really get bored with it, eating it every day for lunch. 5 days a week, not every day. Just when I take lunches, I take these. So the red kind is very different. What we get here is a little less thickness in the flesh. It's a little less succulent. It's a little less fruity in the way that this is. There's none of that none of the peach and apricot. It's a different kind of fruitiness, and I'm not sure I can say what the fruit is. but it's less sweet, less fruity, but still in that direction. And it's a different direction. It's more of a very plain cherry, more of a very plain, some red fruit that's very vague. Plum. It's soft. It's subtle. But let's go in and see how this one is right now. Something a little sharper, a little more vegetal, a little more attention getting than the yellow kind, but it's not, it doesn't scream what fruit it is. So while I'd call it sweet and fruity, it's really hard to describe. So I enjoy it. It's distinct. It's different. I think I could pick all these out in a blind tasting. If someone gave me pieces of these things, cut up and blind. So the last one I'll do here is the orange, which is very similar to the yellow. It's a little different slant on the fruitiness. I think it's still sweet. It's usually has thick flesh and very succulent, full of moisture. Lots of moisture in these things. Maybe even thicker flesh than the yellow. The sweetness might be a notch or half a notch up from the yellow, and the fruitiness is maybe down a little bit. It's hard to say precisely, since I don't know what fruit it is I'm talking about. So I like those. They're pleasant, they're sweet, they're appealing, and soft and subtle. They're not strong flavors at all. So I enjoy those. I enjoy it every day. But now we're going over to their bigger brethren, where you'll see these in the grocery stores and produce departments, where you get very large orange, red, and yellow peppers. I'm trying to call all these things chilies after the Mexican way of doing things, but it's just hard to call these non-hot, zero heat things chilies. They've been peppers all my life, and that's probably what I'll stick to. So these pretty much have the same kind of flavor. These yellow and orange are a little more fruity than this guy. This is hard to describe. This is the most vague fruity flavor. These have about the same flavor as their smaller counterparts. So it's an apricot-y, peachy, soft, light, fruit kind of vibe that you get from these. But I'll go in and take a little section. All the other stuff I have here is related to making something out of these. So I took one of the orange peppers and put it into a salsa. We'll get to that later. Then I roasted an orange pepper. Took the flesh after peeling and put it into a salsa. So we're going to taste those next, but right now I'm going to cut into these ribbons. This is a very sharp knife that could do some damage. But I just went a small section. Look, I got a rib right out of the middle. Oh well. They don't carry any heat. They aren't unpleasant. But I'm going to pick it off and cast it aside. So a little piece of the yellow flesh from the bigger pepper. Let's give this a try. Very thick flesh, very watery, lighter fruity notes than these peppers over here, the small guys. So maybe that's why I like these so much, is they're less watery, and the fruit and sweet flavors are more concentrated. So this might be good for stuffing with an interesting flavorful mixture of rice or pasta or meat or something with a lot of flavor in it that you cook into it because of the recipe, but it doesn't have much flavor itself. If I took this for lunch every day, it'd be like banging my head against the wall. So you have to do something in the cooking process to add to it. The flavor comes from somewhere else, not from this thing. These I could eat and do. Wow, quite a difference. So I will just take a small section of Mr. Red here and pull them out and give that a taste. So the ribs and seeds don't really hurt anything. If you throw them in a recipe, they mix in and blend in okay, but I usually take them out of these big sweet peppers before I put them into recipes. So I took out ribs and seeds before I made this salsa. Okay, this has a little bit, the red one has a little bit of a tang, more than over here. So fruitiness, it's a red something or other, but I can't say exactly what it is. The fruitiness is vague. Plummy, cherry, berry something. And light and subtle. Doesn't go very far down that road, it's just a couple of steps. Very thick flesh, very high moisture, very succulent, but not all that flavorful. So very similar to the red thing over here. Now let's trim up this guy a little bit and try the orange, because he wound up in the salsas. Just getting rid of seeds here. I'll tear off a piece. Very similar to the yellow. It's got the vague, subtle, light peachiness or apricot or other kind of very light, mild stone fruit. Very pleasant, very lightly fruity. Nothing wrong with it. And I think the flavors in the small peppers are a little bit stronger, more intense. So I can continue to eat these things. I would have trouble eating these things every day. And so these would need to be part of a recipe, part of cooking, part of something else that brings more flavor to the party. And one thing I do I'll be doing it a lot on the really hot chilies, is putting it into a salsa, because I don't want to eat it neat, but I'm just looking for what flavors stand out when you do put it into a salsa. So this is very simple salsa that uses only fire roasted tomatoes, roasted white onion, roasted red onion, a little bit of roasted garlic. But there's the only salt comes from canned tomatoes. There's no cilantro. A little bit of lime juice. I'll have a recipe down below, the basic recipe for this, and then the amount of chili I put in will vary wildly, depending on what kind it is, because some are too hot to put in. So I make a base so I pull out 350 grams of a base, and I might add 100 grams of these mild things. I might add 20 grams of some really hot thing, just to get the flavor integrated and not burn me up. I just want to check what the flavor is when it's in a dish like this. So this is made from one of these orange ones that is fresh, and just blend it in today. So here we go. Okay, tomatoes number one thing. I can tell the onions in there, and I can tell something is cooked, roasted, browned, caramelized to some extent. Something has a nice, deep, richer flavor that you would expect from vegetables. And I can see chunks of the orange pepper in there. It's a different fruitiness than the tomato is, but it's not strong. It is subtle, it's buried underneath, there's a couple of things on top of it, so I can barely detect the orange pepper there. And the pepper is fully 1/4 of the recipe. There's a bunch of onion, a bunch of tomato, a little garlic, and a lot of it is pepper, and it's just barely poking its head out enough to get noticed. So what is poking out is fruity, it's sweet, it's pleasant, it's got all the characteristics of these peppers I eat for lunch every day. And it's almost salty enough to be a salsa that you would enjoy eating on chips, but there's just not a lot of pop or flavor from that you're looking for when you eat hotter things. Okay, so I like that. But now I think I'm going to switch plates here and move away my fresh peppers and move in my roasted pepper. So a couple bits of black skin aren't going to hurt you. But it is bitter, so you want to minimize that. So I'm going to cut into some and get a piece. So I've liked the orange all along. It might be the most tasty. The yellow might be the most tasty. They're a little bit different, but definitely both different than the red. So, yes, this is still succulent, still very high moisture flesh. I'll cut it into a few pieces so I can sample reasonable amounts. Wow, whole different animal. It's a savory, smoky, roasted. Something's really happened here that changed the whole character. So will this orange and this orange pepper have very mild, hard to locate flavors, hard to identify. You really zoom in on the caramelized, roasted, cooked, savory and umami notes are in here that I'm really enjoying eating this plain. And it would be great in some recipe. If you could stuff a pepper like this with some really fragrant, tasty, and spicy mixture, rice and meat or something like that, this roasting would add a whole new dimension to the whole thing. So, yeah, roasting a pepper of any kind, as far as I've been able to tell, and I've done hot ones, I've done these sweet ones, it adds a new dimension that wasn't there before. But now I'm going to go on to the salsa that's made with a roasted pepper, like this one. So the recipe is the very same base, and it's just a similar amount of roasted orange pepper instead of fresh. It's still got a couple layers of things above it, but the flavor that you do find is better. It's still sweet, it's still a little fruity, but the savoriness, some kind of buttery, caramely, roasted things popping out. It's not strong. Popping out may be too strong of a descriptor, but it's delicious. So this might be a fairly boring salsa to have with some chips and a beer and just discussing something with a friend. This one would disappear first. This would go away quickly. And it's still on the boring side by lots of people's descriptions or expectations. But the savory notes from the roasting just kick it up a notch, even though it's just a plain old sweet bell pepper without a lot of heat. So that's a great thing to do with any pepper you come across, is to amp up the flavors by roasting it. Getting that peel off and then using it that way. Very good. So what I have here is just a spicy beef and rice mixture inside one of these red peppers. One of these sweet bell peppers that's red. And usually some sort of sauce on it, but I kind of wanted to show the structure. Everyone's seen these things in different places. Very popular in cafeterias because they're easy to make, easy to assemble. From bulk quantities of the parts. So, let's see if I'm going to burn myself. So the beef and rice mixture is on the spicy side. And the texture. The pepper is a good, fruity vehicle for eating it and enjoying it. It brings something to the party, but the flavor mostly comes from the beef and rice mixture. So that's the main use I would suggest for these peppers, is to stuff them with something interesting. So I think that'll do it for episode number 2, where we looked at all these different kinds of sweet bell peppers. So again, please like, subscribe, comment, leave questions down below, share this with friends, and come back for episode 3, where we're looking at sushitos. Cheers.